Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to more Broken Arrow. Today we're going to be showcasing the 5th Russian spec, the Mechanized Infantry, which is actually kind of unrevealed until this part right here. A couple of content creators and game journalists got access to another demo. I know a lot of people want to play Broken Arrow. I wish more people could play Broken Arrow. If I could share the demo with the entire Steam community, I would press the button if I had access to it. I don't have any power here. I just cannot give everyone access as much as I would maybe want to. With that said, we'll just go through this in the order of the categories, starting off with the Vetka 5-man recon team, mostly suppressed actually outside of the SVD, which is a little disappointing. You'd hope that he would have a suppressor, decent anti-tank, a couple of anti-tank weapons to at least defend themselves with. So just a standard recon team. They kind of blend into each other after a while. Then moving on to the snipery, either with an SVD and an SV98, or for a couple points more, we can upgrade that SV98 to the ASVK anti-material rifle, just very similar to the American M107. Smaller team, decent, even helicopter, anti-helicopter use, but not too sure how effective that's going to be. All right, moving on to the BRM-1K, starting off with this 73mm Grom. We can upgrade that to a 30mm for just a couple of points extra, or we can go down in our defensive armament. We do get a laser designator, and we go up in our recon vision, adding about, 25 or 20% more to the visual range, but you are obviously surrendering the ability to really do meaningful damage to enemy vehicles. In terms of armor, we can give it a little bit more armor. I don't really know if that's necessarily that useful. You are also killing the amphibious capability of the vehicle at that point, but you are adding a bunch of armor, the heat and the kinetic energy. We can see that here, the numbers are represented. So the white is the kinetic defense, orange is the heat defense. So you are adding a decent amount, especially look at that rear defense going up by like 500% and almost more than 100% in terms of the frontal armor. But yeah, losing the amphibious capability, it's a meh situation, especially for a recon vehicle. The Motostrelki, the standard infantry section. I like the actual, is that a height difference between these characters? I liked it a lot. The fact that some characters or some soldiers are just slightly different in height adds a lot, I think, to the less copy pasta feeling of Broken Arrow, though you really don't have too much time to look at this close to the situation. Standard squad, a bunch of AKs. Of note here is they're wearing EMR camo, but then they have this Flora-esque helmet and vest cover, which is interesting. The Motostrelki with an AGS, they're very similar to the regular Motostrelki. They just sort of get an upgrade in terms of their weaponry. You can see the RPK becoming a PKP, but you do lose one of them, and you lose the 5 RPG 26s for an AGS-17 grenade launcher. Well, this one doesn't really need an explanation, just an IGLA, an anti-air system instead of the AGS. This is basically just a copy. Swapping over here, we can kind of see a little bit more observable, a little bit easier to note on this version of the screen. The Oknomechiki, which I believe are engineers based on my very limited knowledge of Russian. It looks like, yes, we have MRO-Z incendiaries, or we could upgrade those or switch those out for some Schmel thermobarics. So this might not be fully developed yet. This is obviously a work in progress. The Schmels are almost a 100% upgrade. You lose a little bit of damage, but you get a lot more pen in case you're really looking for pen, and you even gain a little bit more range. Maybe this needs to just be a 10 or 15 or 5-point upgrade. So keep that in mind. Not everything you're seeing is obviously final. I'm not going to try to pronounce this on YouTube. I believe this means bassoon, as in the instrument, but I'm not risking that. A standard ATGM, we can upgrade that to the Factoria, which just gives you a little bit more damage in terms of heat penetration, a little bit more range, and a little bit more just explosive power, but it is going to cost you in terms of having to add 15 points per squad. The Pulemechki, which is, I believe it stands for machine gunner, it obviously is a machine gun team. It's actually a pretty decent squad, 7 members, but you get 3 medium machine guns with even some light anti-tank. Though we can, ooh, that's a big one. You go down in a medium machine gun, but you upgrade that to the Cord, which I believe is a 12.7mm machine gun. You lose 1 medium, but you do go up to having then 2 heavies, but you also lose a RPG. This is really more of a defensive version of this PKP squad. Though the PKP squad is already kind of a defensive unit in general. And then finally, the RPG-29 Vampire squad comes with 2 of these RPG-29 Vampires. Obviously, very high heat pen. They're also relatively expensive. The main downside is going to be having just an issue with range, considering even the base one here has a 1200 range, going up to 1300 on a Factoria. You're looking at 50% or less of that in terms of range, but you are actually getting a little bit more in terms of penetration, because the Vampire is actually apparently a really capable launcher. But yeah, you're running the risk of range versus penetration. It's just a selection you'll have to make. Moving on to the vehicles, the BMO-1 reminds me of a BMP, but this is a BMO-1 and not a BMP-2, which is, I'm actually kind of uncertain what this is. I've never heard of a BMO-1. But can we upgrade this? Oh, we can just give, ooh, this reminds me almost of the armor you see on the T-15 or the T-14. This actually is an alright upgrade. Again, you go up more than 100%. You also get a little bit more extra hit points. You go up from 14 to 16, and surprisingly, no issues with either the amphibious capabilities or the speed. So for 10 points, it's a pretty big upgrade. But keep in mind, again, they may or may not just do a pass and make sure that the amphibious parts of these are nerfed or removed. Then the BMP-1, very standard mechanized vehicle, obviously very archaic at this point. Give it some extra armor. The armor actually, again, looks very fancy, but this one does end up losing the amphibious capability. So is it worth it? Maybe not on the BMP-1, but maybe yes so on the BMO, which then again does come with an extra 30mm gun, whereas the BMP-1 doesn't come with the 30mm autocannon, so it's not really that useful for closer range combat. We can upgrade this to the 1P, which comes with a ATGM. We can give it the 1PG, which is actually getting a little like a BTR-90-esque situation, where you also get the grenade launcher on the back. And also seems to upgrade the ATGM to the M version. A little bit more pen, a little bit more damage, and a little bit more range. Just a general upgrade. And in the BMP-1AM, it's definitely looking like a BTR-82 type turret with a 30mm autocannon, but obviously you're losing the ATGM capabilities of the 1PG and the 1P. The BMP-2 is going to have a similar situation where we can give it the 2G turret, does give it the AGS on the side for the grenade launcher capability for 5 points. I don't think it's a terrible situation. It's always nice to have a little bit more extra firepower. Or you can go for the Berezok turret, which gives it 4 of the Kornet ATGMs, 1600 range, 1000 heat pen. The BMP-3, this one has always been really interesting to me because it has that sort of coaxially mounted, not just a machine gun, which is what you're sort of used to on vehicles, but also a 30mm next to a 100mm gun. Now, this can obviously have some ERA, which just makes it look ridiculous, by the way, I gotta say. It's also interesting that the speed has not been nerfed. Something that you see on a lot of vehicles is, especially the Humvees, I noticed it on a lot in the earlier testing, the speed of vehicles would go down if you give them extra armor, which I think is a fair balancing maneuver, also besides just making them more expensive. But this is a huge increase. You're adding 400% to the front of the vehicle, like 800 or 700% almost to the side. But yeah, you are just becoming a little bit more expensive. You do look really cool. I gotta say, this thing looks very crazy like that. In terms of weapons, we can give it the BMP-3M, which gives it some ECM. Also, it looks like an extra smoke, which is kind of nice. I should take the armor off. It's a little better, a little bit more pen, look a little bit more accuracy on the main gun, and even 200 meters more visual range. I might be actually missing some of these things sometimes, so please do bear with me. Just a general slight increase in a lot of things. The ECM is very nice because it's a 30% chance that an enemy projectile will miss, I believe, the base chance. The Epoca, pardon my pronunciation, looks absolutely like a thing out of straight Terminator, which is going to give you a Kornet, a Bulat. This is a very short range. That almost looks like an anti-infantry weapon system. Very weird. I'm actually not sure what the Bulat is. Oh, it isn't. Okay, this is for infantry and lighter vehicles. Okay, that's kind of what I figured just based on the range. The Kornet is obviously a very capable ATGM again. but you are adding 35 points to the vehicle. And at that rate, yeah, you're also losing ECM. You're losing that extra smoke that it has on the 3M version. So it's a lot of options. Again, that's what I like about Broken Arrow, choosing the things that you want to use. Now, the RPO is just a thermobaric round, I'm pretty sure. There we go. So this is a thermobaric rocket launcher on an MTLB. The armor package, we can give it some extra armor. I mean, you are removing the airdrop capability. You are removing the amphibious capability. You're giving it like 800% more armor. You're giving it 1,000% more armor on the side. This is a really cheap vehicle. I'm not too sure to what degree this might be alive on the battlefield for very long. I love this little weird roof they got going on in the back over there. Here another MTLB, this time with the ZU-23 twins on the back. It looks very, very dangerous sitting on the back there. Hopefully these are nailed down somehow. We can upgrade this though to a GSH-30K. Why does this remind me of the name of like an Mi-24 gun? But that's a big upgrade. You are paying a lot of extra cash for that upgrade. 40. You're almost making the unit twice as expensive just on that, but you are getting a 30 mil. You are getting IGLA and AA missiles, but you know, it's a risk you'll have to take. You are getting smoke though. The smoke might actually save you if you're being targeted by an enemy helicopter. Up armor, it's going to add some armor. It's going to not slow it down. It does remove the airdrop capability. It does remove the amphibious capabilities. Every time you do keep that in mind. It does add actually a little bit of health as well. And of course, well, the armor upgrades are pretty big, but it's an MTLB in the end. So I mean, what are we really talking about here? I do like the little camera that gets in place of the very archaic, like, what is that, PKT turret from the commander's perspective. The Sturm S, which this is an ATGM carrier, very deadly in other games, like I've seen this in Combat Mission. Very deadly. The Kokon is very capable. We can upgrade that though to the Ataka, straight up, I believe, from the Mi-28 in terms of ATGMs. Huge range. We have huge pen, and these might even actually have capabilities, yeah, against infantry. So even lighter vehicles or just infantry can straight up get targeted. You do have less missiles of those, but they'll still be pretty useful. And you get a 200 meter range upgrade. Between these, you get a 200 meter vision upgrade. So not a bad package. The T-72B1. The B1 we can upgrade with, of course, some of the barrel-launched ATGMs. But then you might as well just go for the BA version, where you get slightly more range, you get slightly more damage, slightly more pen. I lied, only slightly more range. And just, yeah, you're paying 15 points extra, but is it worth it? It's hard to decide right here. Is it going to save you? Likely. Is it going to save you for more than 1 or 2 missiles extra? No. So it's really a 20-point chance. You are very capable of making this T-72 a lot more expensive. I do like this though, the engine upgrade making it a little faster. However, the armor doesn't seem to slow it down. So it would be cool that you could maybe go into the armor, but also being forced and then go into the engine, because right now, as you can see, it doesn't change the speed of the vehicle. But you can make this a pretty expensive tank. 185 versus 130 fully, well, stock versus fully upgraded. The T-72B3, it's similar. We have the B3M. These are just armor upgrades. You get a little bit more health. You're getting just a little, well, actually, this might be all right. If you're getting shot in the butt, that's maybe not going to save you. The OBR-16, which gives you a little bit more health on top of that. But is it worth 10 extra points? Yeah, perhaps, perhaps not. The Arena APS is going to be a big one, intercepting incoming enemy missiles and projectiles, but in the end, you know, you're looking at a 265-point tank just from 200. Then it looks like the OBR-16 with Arena, you do get the full package, but your vehicle has just basically became 50% more expensive, especially once you add the engine to it. The UR-77 Meteorite, and this one I'm not sure. This is an MLRS that fires 2. What in tarnation is this? I am actually just completely flabbergasted. It has terribly short range. It has no heat pen. Basically no heat pen. It's a lot of damage. This might just be a giant sort of mortar. It's kind of what it looks like. It's an MLRS. It's a missile or a rocket. But that is, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure how to feel about this. You get a little bit more health, a little more armor, you lose the amphibious capabilities. I mean, it's not a thing by now, but this is a crazy unit just to look. I've been to open up like this. I have no clue who designed this. I have to read into this. This is a really interesting unit, and I'm not really sure. This might just be to blow an entire block away. All right, moving on to the support vehicles, the 2K22M Tunguska M. And there's an interesting thing here. The Tunguska M1 is a 25-point upgrade. Now, if you look at here, you don't actually see a reason why to upgrade besides maybe the 100 extra meter range. But is that worth 25 points? You might think no. Well, swapping back to this, the engagement types are helicopters and aircraft, but then the M1, it actually can also target incoming missiles, which is a big thing and might actually be worth the 25-point investment. Then the Panzer has helicopters, missiles, and jets as well. And this is just it's a pretty big upgrade. You're getting more missiles, they do more heat pen, and they also have 300 meter more range or 400 meter more base range. But yeah, you are making this vehicle now become about, well, actually exactly 50% more expensive. The Akatsiya M1, we can actually upgrade that to the M2, which seemingly just adds a little bit more accuracy on the main gun. Is that the only thing that it seems to do? Oh, and a reload time increase, or decrease, actually. That's a pretty good one. So you do have a faster reload, and you have a little bit more accuracy, which you want those shells to hit, and you want them to hit as fast as possible. So this might not be a bad upgrade. The 2S4 Tulpan, a 240 millimeter mortar. We're kind of making this go back to World War II. I'm thinking of like a Karl Thor, although I guess we're about halfway to a Karl Thor. This looks really cool, by the way. You guys are just like standing here in animation. We have the Tulpan and the Giatsint. Okay, that becomes a 152 millimeter gun. You do lose on the, well, sheer volume of the shell, but you gain almost 100% more range. You go from 2200 up to 4200 meter range. Lose heat pen, you do lose accuracy, and you lose the just pure damage that it does in terms of the shell. So it's a downgrade in terms of that, but it's an upgrade in terms of just being able to reach out almost twice as far, which makes your vehicle a little bit at risk of getting hit by enemy artillery, missiles, or just helicopters, jets, any sort of counter attack from the enemy. The Malka, this one reminds me straight up of World in Conflict, just a giant artillery piece, a 203 millimeter gun. There's not much to say here. It's just 4,300 meter range. Oh, here we go. I mean, that's really cool. Really cool little attention to detail. Are you going to have time to watch that in game? Likely not, but hey, we can watch it in the arsenal here. Moving on to the Buk M2, obviously a very heavy anti-air with pretty effective range at 3,000 meters, but you only have 4 missiles. You can upgrade that to the Buk M3, which then gets 6. You get 200 meters more range. You do get a little loss on the damage, a little loss on the pen, but it wouldn't surprise me. I kind of would have expected this to have maybe another vehicle type to engage, but it's a general upgrade, at least in terms of the range. And of course, you get an extra 2 missiles, which means that you have to worry a little bit less about resupplying this out in the field. The standard MTL-BVM, which comes with a quad heavy machine gun, give that the up armored if we so feel like, but yeah, you do again lose the ability to airdrop it or to traverse rivers. And in terms of this, it's a light vehicle. We can give it a KPVT, turns it into sort of a very makeshift BTR, or BRDM, obviously on tracks, not wheels. An autocannon, again, like a BTR 80 or 82, and then an upgraded version of that where we get a better 30 millimeter cannon, and we also get a grenade launcher on the side. And this is a decent unit. You know, this is not really that useful, but for 20 or 25 points extra, I could choose being an all right unit, though you kind of need the armor. And then, yeah, you're looking at 75 points, and it's going to not be very fast. This gives it, again, some more health. So lots of upsides, lots of downsides. Depends on how you're going to want to use this within your deck or your specialization. The Strela has obviously some AA missiles on the back, which you could upgrade to the Luchnik E, as well as the Sosna. The Luchnik does give you double the missiles. You get a little bit of range, but you do lose out on damage. Now I'm wondering, can this engage helicopters and missiles? And the Sosna, oh, I was really hoping one of these could maybe engage missiles, but you are adding 100% to the cost of this unit. A little bit of a benefit of having more autonomy. It does have like more than 150% basically of the vanilla unit's missiles. It does more damage. It has more pen, and you even have 600 meters more range. So it's a huge upgrade, but you're definitely paying for that. All right, so the Diva is an interesting one. This one has more range than the more expensive Vasilek. Also, I love this animation, by the way. But the Vasilek, while having less range, the interesting part sits here. Magazine size 4 versus Diva, which doesn't have a magazine. So the Vasilek does have less range, but you can see here the guy actually is carrying a pack of 4, which means you are hitting a position with 4 rounds in rapid success, and not just with one, you know, aim, reload, fire, aim, or aim, fire, reload, aim, fire, reload. So it's kind of a larger amount of units are shells in the same area, but you are paying a little premium. And then the Dilemma, which is I believe it's a bigger mortar, 120 versus the 82 mil, more range, more damage, more pen. But yeah, you're paying 30 points extra. I think the Vasilek is actually an interesting unit, sort of a middle ground, a little less range, but you do have the impact of multiple shells pretty much right there. Then the PTS-4 Duplo, this is just a transport vehicle. This may just be here to showcase that you can actually call this in and use it as a resupplier or a transporter, transporting infantry or transporting machine gun teams or supplies. Helicopters are empty for the mechanized. Again, keep in mind, you're always going to be combining this with, say, the VDV. Boom, helicopters. I doubt there's anyone's in here. I'm assuming there's some motorized, and I believe the naval had some really cool ones. In terms of aircraft, we have the Su-27SM air superiority fighter with a lot of options, as is pretty much standard tradition at this point. Like, we can make this thing so expensive that your eyes are going to water just considering bringing this in at 535. You can focus on short range AA, you can focus on being ECM, you can focus on having medium range cluster bombs, or you can have infrared, you can have shorter range AA for helicopters, more cluster bombs, more smart bombs, semi-active for longer range. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but this is pretty much Broken Arrow, as cheap or as expensive as you want to make it, or as dedicated or as multi-role. One plane with everything, or multiple planes that have like a dedicated role, like one AA fighter, you have one close range for helicopters, one to strike tanks, one to strike infantry. You could pretty much do whatever you want, and I think that's really freaking cool in terms of just having customization in a game as big as Broken Arrow. And of course, the Su-25SM, the sort of Russian equivalent to the A-10 Warthog. We have fuel tanks, so we can again make this vehicle pretty expensive with the stupid bombs. I like the name for that. Cluster bombs, incendiary, regular bombs. We have the big ass S-13 rockets. So these are 120 millimeter rockets, as it tell me here. 130, I was very close. S8s, we have anti-radiation, which are, besides just massive rockets, good against enemy radar that's been turned on, so you can deal with enemy radar installations on the ground. And then we have the KH-29TD air-to-ground, which are cruise missiles, actually with a relatively low range, to be fair. But yeah, we have we can load this thing up to just be nothing but rocket spam. I'm actually curious, how many rockets can we put on this? We're already at over 120. We can go for 160. 160. There's no way that this even makes sense to run this many rockets. But yeah, a mixed range of a mixed setup of short range AA, perhaps an ECM pod if you're worried about enemy AA shooting you down. And I would personally not get this many rockets at all. I prefer having a few rockets that are really big compared to a couple, or like a lot of rockets that are really small. Basically come to the end of showcasing what is in the mechanized units for the Russians. There's going to be more, hopefully, videos coming from my channel here in the coming days. Some multiplayer gameplay, some single player gameplay, and I want to go over some of the units in the arsenal that we may or may not have fully seen yet. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, thank you to the developers and publisher for giving me access to the game. I hope this comes out as soon as possible for everyone who is sitting there eagerly waiting, and I hope to see you in the next one.